Hey there, Johnny May here, and welcome to this week's quick tip where I'm going to teach you how to incorporate jazzier sounding scales into your blues solo. Now, when a lot of students start improvising the blues, they use one scale, their C blues scale. And after a while, it starts to sound very repetitive, and they want to use more interesting sounding scales in their improvisation. So in today's lesson, I'm going to teach you 3 amazing jazz scales that you can use in your improv, plus a great exercise to practice these scales. So let's go ahead and dive in. All right, before I teach you these scales, I want to first talk about how most students learn to play the blues. So they'll learn their 3 blues chords, C7, they might play their F7 like this, it's called the 4 chord, and then they might learn their G7 like this, right? Really simple. And then in the right hand, they'll learn their C blues scale, which is this: C, E flat, F, F sharp, G, B flat, and C, okay? And they'll basically solo over their blues chords just like this, and it sounds nice, but after a while it starts to sound pretty repetitive, and you'll want to use some more interesting scales. So this gets us into the next topic, which is what are some jazzier scales that you can use over these chords. By the way, if you guys are enjoying this lesson, please give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button for more videos just like this. Well, here are the 3 scales that you can use over your blues chords, and these sound super jazzy. Doesn't that sound amazing? And here they are. The first chord, C7, you can use this very cool scale called C Dominant Diminished. Go ahead and play this with me. We're going to start on the C, and it's a very simple scale because it's a half step, whole step scale. So if I go up a half step to D flat, whole step to E flat, look at my fingering as well, 1, 2, 3, skip under my thumb to the E. Okay, that's a half step. I'm going to go whole step to G flat with my index finger, thumb under to G, that's a half step, whole step to A, half step to B flat, whole step to C. That is called the C Dominant Diminished scale. It's a half step, whole step scale. And the reason the scale sounds so cool and jazzy is because it not only hits all of your notes of a C7, but it hits these really cool extra notes in between the chord tones. We call these chord alterations. This is called the flat 9, the sharp 9, the sharp 11, and this is called the 13. Now, if this is not familiar to you, don't worry. You'll learn your chord extensions and alterations as you go. But if you want to play a really cool jazzy scale, this is the scale to practice. And so what I really recommend that you do is just practice this scale up and down. And it's kind of a weird scale the first time you see it. You go, this doesn't look like a scale I've ever played. Well, that's because it's a half step, whole step scale. Now, before I move on and teach you the other chords, if you want to learn more jazz scales like this, check out our Scales for Improv over 7th Chords course over at pianowithjohnny.com. I'll put a link to that below. You can learn all kinds of other really cool scales to use on these chords. If you're playing the F7 chord, what is the F Dominant Diminished scale? Well, if you start on F and you go half step, whole step, thumb under to A, half step, whole step. I'm going to go thumb to the C, half step, whole step, half step. This basically is your F Dominant Diminished scale. Okay, again, it's kind of a weird looking scale, but it sounds so cool because you're hitting a lot of these chord extensions and alterations. All of these middle notes in between are those colorful notes you can add to a dominant 7th chord. Now, if you want to learn which notes you can add to a dominant 7th chord, check out our chord extensions and alterations course over at pianowithjohnny.com. This is where we talk all about that. So this is your F Dominant Diminished scale, and I would just practice this up and down the piano. Make sure it's pretty comfortable in your fingers. All right, the 3rd scale you can use is on your G7 chord. This is your 5 chord in the blues, and guess what scale you're going to use? Your G Dominant Diminished scale. Okay, so we're going to start on the G here, and we're basically going to walk up half step to our A flat, whole step to B flat, half step to B, whole step to C sharp, and then we're going to go D on the thumb, E, that's a whole step, half step, and the thumb on the G. Okay, that's your G Dominant Diminished scale. Really cool scale. okay, you can use on a G dominant 7 chord. Okay, and once again, it hits all of the chord tones of a G7, plus it adds the flat 9, sharp 11, and the 13. Once again, all colors that you can add to a dominant 7 chord when you're playing jazz. All right, we're going to review these one more time, and then I'm going to move on and teach you the exercise that will help you combine these scales over the 12-bar blues. So C7, we have C, D flat, E flat, E, F sharp, G, A, B flat, C. F7, we have F, G flat, A, B, C, D, E flat, F. And on our G7, we have G, A flat, B flat, B, C sharp, D, E, F, and G. Does that make sense? Now, this is kind of the first step, is to make sure your right hand scales are more interesting, but you can also make your left hand chords sound a little bit more jazzy when you're playing the blues as well. So I want to teach you these 3 chords you can use when you're playing jazz. The first chord is on a C7. Go ahead and jump up to this chord with me. We have E, B flat, and D. Okay, this is a lot like a C7 chord, except we're adding a D to this chord, which we call the 9th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is a note that you can add to dominant chords to make it a little bit more jazzy. Okay, that's your C. Next chord, your F chord, make it a little more interesting. Really cool rootless voicing chord. This chord does not have a root, so we call it a rootless voicing. It's E flat and A, which come from your F7 chord, but we're adding a D, which we call the 13. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There's your D, so we play it like that, okay? The third chord you want to know is on your G7, okay? Normally a G7 you could play like that, but we're going to put the 7th, the 3rd on this chord, and then the E, which we call the 13. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There's your E, which you're going to add to the G7 chord. And instantly your chords sound way more jazzy. Instead of playing, you're doing. Doesn't that sound way better? We're getting those cool chord extensions. Now, if you want to learn all of your rootless voicings, you can in our rootless voicings course over at pianowithjonny.com. You can learn them in all 12 keys for all chord types plus exercises. So I'll put another link to that below. All right, so you learned your dominant diminished scales, but that's not enough. You need to actually practice your dominant diminished scales over your 12-bar blues. So here's a great exercise that you can use to connect these scales. All right, first chord in the blues is a C7 chord. We're going to play the C dominant diminished scale going up. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then on our F7 chord, which is here, we're going to play the F dominant diminished scale going down, all right? And we're going to start on the C for this scale. So it's going to be C, B, A flat, G flat, F, E flat, D. Does that make sense? So we're playing the C dominant diminished scale going up and the F dominant diminished scale coming down, but we're going to start on the C. That way we can reset back on the next chord, C7, with the C dominant diminished scale going back up. Does that make sense? Now, the next chord in a 12-bar blues is your F chord. We're going to go back to that F chord, and we'll play the F dominant diminished scale going up, starting on C. And then we're back to our C chord. We're going to do the C dominant diminished scale. Makes sense? All right. For the G dominant diminished scale, we're going to come up on this note. We're going to come up to the D. The notes here, just as a review, D, E, F, G, A flat, B flat, B, C sharp. I'm going to put the forefinger there on the C sharp, and then I'm going to come down my F dominant diminished starting on the C. And then from here, we're going to go back to our C dominant diminished. And then at the very end of the 12-bar blues form, it's very common to throw in a 5 chord on the G7. We're going to come down from the B, and then finally at the end, we reset back to the C. All right, so that is the exercise. Now what I want to do is I want to play this with the backing track, but before I play with the backing track, if you guys are enjoying this lesson, we have a really great course on what I call Jazzy-Blues, and it's basically how you mix jazz and blues together, and we talk about comping. It's called Jazzy-Blues comping. I'll put a link to that below. All right, let's go ahead and play this exercise with the included backing track, and we're going to do it at a little bit slower tempo. We're going to play it at 100 BPM. Here's how it sounds. C dominant diminished, F dominant diminished, C, F, back to C, G, F, back to C, back to the beginning. Now I do want to mention that the backing tracks for this lesson and the lesson sheet music you're seeing up here on the top left of the screen are downloadable over at pianowithjonny.com. We also have the smart sheet music for this lesson, which allows you to change the key for the entire lesson with a click of one button. You can practice it in any key, so I'll put a link to all of that below. Now once you've practiced this scale, you want to start improvising using these scales. So I'm going to walk you through a quick little improv, and we're going to play this at even a slower tempo. This is going to be at the 70 BPM tempo, and I'm going to walk you through how to create amazing jazz lines using these scales. So here we go. Here we go. C. Notice that I'm changing between these scales. Here's the G chord. Alright, this concludes this week's quick tip, and if you enjoyed this lesson, be sure to check out pianowithjonny.com. We have over 900 step-by-step lessons in jazz, blues, theory, technique, improvisation. It's the full learning platform for all playing levels. Also, be sure to check out the Piano with Jonny membership. This gives you unlimited access to all of our courses, plus you get to be part of our live monthly events, including our live Q&As, our live workshops, lessons. We do student assessments where you can send me a video and I'll give you personalized feedback. We do weekly challenges for our students, student collaborations, and we have a ton of fun. So go check out Piano with Jonny, and I'll see you in the next one.